It's shocking to me right now that I could actually come up with 20 of my best finance tips to even tell you. But the truth is, I could actually easily come up with maybe 50 or 60 at this point. But when I was in my 20s and even part of my 30s, I was an irresponsible financial moron and a spoiled brat. When I was right around 30, I vividly remember having a conversation with a guy in my office where I was almost bragging about not knowing how much my paycheck was when it hit my bank account. Now, don't get me wrong, there was always money in my checking account and I always saved for retirement, but I wasn't really planning anything. And a budget was something that I had never even considered doing because it was for people who were broke. And when a huge emergency would come, I'd just go run into the bank and take out a big loan. I could always get a loan. So today I'm going to talk about the 20 best personal finance tips and tricks that I would give myself if I could do it all over again. Wouldn't it be awesome if I could do it over again? Although I don't think I want to go back to being 20. Hi, I'm Wendy Valencia. Over the last few years, my husband Mauricio and I have become financial geniuses. I know it sounds cocky, but we've worked really hard to get there. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little bragging about how awesome we're doing now. The good thing for Mauricio is that he's 12 years younger, so he's actually learning about this money stuff way before I did. But since we're doing really well financially at this point, it's hard to imagine a time that we were not really good with money. But looking back, there are so many things that I wish I had done from the very beginning, and a few that I wish I hadn't done, and a few that I actually did, but maybe not intentionally. I was just kind of doing them. And the single most important thing about finances is that you are intentional with them. Okay, so being intentional financially is probably personal finance tip number one. But since I already listed out the 20 and that would be number 21, that's going to throw off my whole numbering system and the title. So we're just going to pretend I never said that. So this is going to go fast, so hold on to your hats, guys. Personal finance tip number one, budget every single cent. If I could go back in time, I would tell myself that I need to budget every single cent of my income every single month. I would say that I needed to have a plan for what I wanted my money to do, because by planning, I would be able to achieve what I want to achieve. I would say I needed to be intentional with my finances. Look at me, I actually fit be financially intentional into my 20 best tips when I hadn't planned on it. Personal finance tip number two, always buy simple, classic styles that are made of quality materials over anything trendy. If you develop a personal style and buy quality products that fit with your style, you can actually use them for years and years to come. I actually did this partially, but mostly with my work attire. I actually had a really important meeting last week, and I was putting on my navy blue suit and thought to myself that I had actually bought that suit like 18 years ago. Now, granted, the pants are a tad bit flowy for my taste at this point, but the whole suit was a classic cut and color, and I can imagine wearing it for years to come. By doing this, you save in the long run because you can wear clothes until they actually fall apart rather than replacing them every couple of years. And if you do want trendy pieces, that's fine, but buy them super cheap because you're not going to be wearing them for long, so it doesn't matter if they fall apart quickly. Now, keep in mind, buying classic quality over trendy not only applies to clothes, but it also applies to decorating your home. If everything in your house is gray and white, farmhouse style, you're going to be wanting to replace all of your furniture in 10 years. And that is a huge waste of money. If you stick with classic decorating styles and accent with the cheaper trendy stuff, then you're going to be way better off in the long run. Personal finance tip number three, ABS. Always be saving. I don't care what anyone tells you, you should always be saving money. Saving in sinking funds or saving for retirement or just saving for a rainy day. Now, I'll talk more about sinking funds in a minute, so let's focus on retirement for the moment. Now, we didn't always save for retirement, but I did start saving for retirement in my 20s. So today in my 40s, we definitely have a positive net worth, despite the fact that we still owe over $100,000. We've actually had a positive net worth the entire debt-free process. But the last 3 years, we didn't contribute to retirement at all. And I'm here to tell you that was a horrible mistake for us. That was 3 years of 100% match that we lost, and 3 years of compound interest for 25 years. That's a lot of money. So let's do some simple math so I can show you where we were so stupid. So let's say we had contributed only about $500 a month to retirement during those 3 years. Now keep in mind, this doesn't take into account that my agency matches the first 5% of what we contribute, which is free money plus compound interest. We're just talking straight retirement savings. So we put $500 a month for 3 years at 8% interest. We'll just say 8% interest because that's actually what I've averaged over the last 20 years. So that would have us in the 3 years at $20,183.94. So 20 years from that point, I'll be 67 and maybe I'll be retired, or maybe I'll still be doing YouTube and talking about money. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, I never contribute another cent, which would be dumb, but this is my scenario, so let's roll with what I want. So your 8% interest goes ahead and continues on for the 20 years that between the time you stop contributing and the time you're done. That $20,183 becomes $94,072.10. So I just cost myself about $100,000 without even taking into account that I missed a match. Yeah, that was stupid. Personal finance tip number 4, use sinking funds. This one was a game changer for us. We would look at the year ahead and see what was coming down the pike and start planning for it. If you want to plan for stuff today, you won't have to borrow money later. Simple. And you can have sinking funds for anything. If you want to take a trip, all you have to do is save the money. If you want a pricey summer camp for the kiddos because you two are working parents and it's an expense that hurts every year, break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. You can make sinking funds for anything. And if you're impulsive and tend to want to do stuff on a whim, there is absolutely no rule that says you can't have an I'm an impulsive person sinking fund where you have a couple of $1,000s just sitting there earmarked for your random road trip to Vegas that you want to take at the last minute. Just plan ahead so you can have what it is you want. So I guess I'm telling you, you can be impulsive if you plan for it. Personal finance tip number 5, live on 50% of what you earn. Put 25% away for retirement, 15% for savings or sinking funds, and 10% for fun. So I've thought long and hard about these percentages, and these are ideal in my world. If you focus on the percentage of your take-home pay to guide you in your financial plan, you're going to succeed, period. Living on 50% of your income is not as hard as you think. 25% for housing like rent or mortgage, and 25% for living expenses like food, gas, insurance, and stuff like that. And I believe in saving 25% for retirement because, hey, were you paying attention to the part where I talked about compound interest? 15% for sinking funds because you should always be planning for the short term, not just Christmas. You're going to have to buy a new car at some point, so you probably want to start that, and you're going to want to take a vacation, so start that. And one of those sinking funds had better be a God only knows sinking fund, which most people call an emergency fund, but I think it's more fun to call it a God only knows sinking fund. This one, in my book, is by far the most important sinking fund. And then, of course, the last 10% is for fun, because if you're not enjoying your life, why are you living? Personal finance tip number 6, you do not need to increase your lifestyle every time you get a raise. This one was a big one for us. 2 years ago, I got a promotion, and in the past with promotions, we would just spend more, but this last one, we didn't. We put more money towards our financial goals, and that has really benefited us greatly in the long run. Now, I'm not saying you should never increase your lifestyle, but you need to meet your financial goals and plan for the future before you start increasing. Keeping the 50, 25, 15, 10 rule is the smartest way to increase your lifestyle once you have paid off debt and have a solid sinking fund system in place. Personal finance tip number 7, Invest from day one, start today. I'm not going to bore you with the power of compound interest talk again, don't worry. But seriously, why are you losing that money 20 years from now? Start investing today. Personal finance tip number 8, have 1 full year of income easily accessible at all times. This is a goal of your God only knows sinking fund, obviously. It should be 1 full year of income in my world. And yes, that will take a while to save. It's a lot of money. But if you start today, you can get it done. I'm aiming for having that amount in the bank about 10 years from now. Personal finance tip number 9, never borrow money for anything. If you're borrowing money, you're not planning, and you should be planning for everything, and using a credit card to pay for stuff is akin to paying for something with someone else's money and then just paying them back with interest. Would you do that? No, of course you wouldn't. Personal finance tip number 10, start saving for your next car as soon as the next one gets to your driveway. And this one was a shocker for me, but I'll be honest, I'm not doing a real good job of this right now. We keep burning through our car sinking fund. But if I want to have a decent car someday, I need to be saving for it. And me personally, I have a tendency to drive a car into the ground. I mean, our Expedition is 14 years old, but it still runs great, although it's starting to have issues. But I promise you, we will be paying cash for our next car for sure. And it's going to be cheap, definitely. Which leads me to personal finance tip number 11. A new to you car is still a new car. I will always buy used. In 10 years, when all this money drama is long gone and Mauricio is an architect, I will finally be able to buy my dream car, but it's going to be used because I don't see the point in having a car that decreases so much in value as soon as you drive it off the lot. Personal finance tip number 12, keep a running list of every expense you have, and that includes every single annual expense. This is something I started doing a couple of years ago, and it was a huge game changer for me. By doing this, I never forgot any of those surprise annual expenses or family birthdays or anything. I even put Melina's really good friends' birthdays in there because I know we're going to have to buy presents, so I might as well be prepared for it. Personal finance tip number 13, set financial goals. I believe you should always be trying to achieve goals, and actually setting them is an important part of achieving them. I honestly believe that part of the reason we never made headway with our past finances is that we didn't set goals. By setting goals, you have a plan, and the only way you get anywhere is to be responsible and actually follow the plan you create. You can't really wander into success. Personal finance tip number 14, credit cards can make things cost a lot more. This one doesn't need a lot of explanation, and while we never really had a credit card problem, we did buy things here and there on credit cards and didn't always pay them off every month. And we did the math on how much we paid for a few things. I think I would probably throw up. I'm not doing that math. Personal finance tip number 15, if you don't have cash to pay for it, you don't need it. This one is a lesson in patience, which is a huge lesson you need to learn in adulthood. If it's a big expense, you need to plan for it. I imagine that when we decide to remodel parts of my parents' house, we'll get estimates, and then we're going to save up double what that estimate was before we even consider starting the job, because nothing ever costs what they actually estimate. Personal finance tip number 16, you can borrow for college, but only what you need to take classes. So this one is near and dear to my heart because, as you know, there are 2 types of debt that I have no issue with. Number 1 is a mortgage, and number 2 is school loans. But school loans should only be for tuition. Considering both situations, it is actually possible to pay cash for both things, your house and school. It's not always ideal for people. They're usually very large costs. If the opportunity presents itself and you can pay cash for those things, more power to you. If you can't, it's okay, but take out the bare minimum. Personal finance tip number 17, look at the total cost for everything. When I was getting married, I didn't look at the entirety of the financial impact of my wedding, and it cost my parents a fortune. But I swear part of the reason I did not was because I was looking at it in pieces. I looked at the wedding itself, which was $5,000, then the reception, which was $1,500, then the photographer. You get the picture. But I never had a running total. And this is absolutely what I would do today, because I'd go in with a budget and I'd be working backwards. Personal finance tip number 18. Always be mindful of your net worth. Calculating your net worth is simple. Add up what you have and subtract what you owe. Your net worth should always be positive. If it isn't, then you need to do whatever it is you need to do to make it positive. And you can accomplish that in one of two ways: increase what you have or decrease what you owe. And honestly, increasing what you have will get you there way faster than decreasing what you owe, although it's a good idea to go ahead and decrease. Personal finance tip number 19. Know how to talk about finances and actually talk about them. A corollary to this is know your spouse's opinions on finances before you marry them. The whole reason I have this channel is to start a movement to remove the taboo associated with talking about money. The more you talk about money, the more you will learn. Listen to other people's opinions, and before you get married, make sure you've had a long discussion with your spouse about where you are financially and where you want to go. Money can destroy a marriage, so talk about it ahead of time. Personal finance tip number 20. You can help a lot more people if you put yourself first. This is probably the biggest lesson that I've learned on this journey. Be financially solvent before you try and help other people. We had a crap ton of debt because we tried to help people without realizing the financial impact to ourselves. And that was quite possibly the worst mistake we could have made. And it really impacted us financially. And while I don't regret helping, I do regret the way we did it. So I'll see you in the next one. See ya. We're out.